Republican Senator David Vitter was among the members of the Senate Banking Committee questioning J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon today. The senator asked what kind of new banking regulations could Dimon endorse. Listen to this.
Is there a true, real version of the Volcker Rule that you think makes sense and should be implemented?
I think we're going to really struggle to get it right, because it was written so vaguely that it's going to be hard for the regulators to actually come up with rules that make it easy for market makers and easy for regulators.
Well, I guess I'm not asking about the current process. I'm asking about, if we start with a blank sheet of paper, would you support a properly designed but true version of the Volcker Rule? Or would you say there should be no such prohibition?
I thought it was unnecessary when it was added on top of all the other stuff.
And Senator Vitter joins me right now. Senator, good to have you on the program.
Great to be with you.
Were you satisfied with that answer?
No, I think in general, Mr. Dimon's answers seem to be, well, we made a serious mistake, but we're not going to do it again. We're going to be really, really careful. I think we need systemic reform, both on the regulatory side and within the biggest banks. It's not very satisfying to me, or I think most Americans, just that we're going to be really smart about it from now on.
Well, you know, let's talk about that, because the Volcker Rule is being debated. I mean, do you think it actually, at this point in time, has made the system safer?
Well, I don't think it's fully implemented, so we don't really know.
And how come it's not fully implemented?
Because they're trying to get the details right, and that's a lot easier said than done. What I'm more focused on, I think we should start with, is capital requirements. And I think there's increasing discussion that we need higher capital requirements for the biggest banks. Just today, the FDIC moved forward with implementation of some of Basel III, but the two newest appointees there, conservatives, basically suggested it didn't go far enough, particularly for the biggest banks. I tend to agree, and I think we need more systemic reform like that, rather than just saying, well, we're going to be smarter about it next time.
And yet you're talking about the big banks even globally, because that whole un-American comment had to do with the U.S. banks having one capital standard and the international banks having another.
We certainly don't want different standards in other parts of the world, and then capital fleeing to the lowest common denominator.
Let me ask you about the Volcker Rule, because it strikes me that it really can't be enforced. First of all, we know that it's not implemented because it hasn't been written yet, but how do you differentiate proprietary trading from just acting on behalf of your customer?
Maria, financial minds smarter than me have to figure that out. It is very, very difficult. However, I don't think we should throw our hands up and say it's impossible, because I think there are fundamental differences, and I do think we need to look at that protection. But again, the clear, simpler line to draw would be increased capital requirements, and I'd rather start there, though I'm certainly not saying we should walk away or abandon the discussion about the Volcker Rule.
Now, let me ask you something that I know that our viewers are interested in. We've got a couple of emails about this. As of 2010, you were among several lawmakers who actually owned shares of J.P. Morgan Chase in your account. Do you still own the stock?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And does this? Do you think this impacts? Does this impact your views on the banking industry? I mean, do you think, you know?
No. I mean, people will have to judge. I don't think my questioning today came across as some sort of groveling stockholder, anything like that to Jamie Dimon.
Mm-hmm. But so you don't think that there should be any rules with, you know, senators, congressmen owning stocks in the situations that they are actually overseeing?
I think there should be absolute and complete disclosure. I think we clearly need to avoid any situation where members of Congress use so-called insider information to benefit. But to prohibit folks from owning things in industries we regulate would basically mean you have to completely get out of the market. I don't think that's very workable.
Well, that's what I do as a reporter, you know. So the media does it. Like I'm not allowed to own individual companies. I own mutual funds, ETFs, you know. But
well, maybe for the future we should transition to that.
Yeah. What about interest rates? Another issue I know that you've looked at. You described the low Fed benchmark rate as very dangerous. Why is this so dangerous?
I think long term we're kicking the can down the road and building problems in the long term, namely inflation. And I'm cynical about the ability of the Fed to, you know, perfectly micromanage this so that when they see some growth coming back, they can tap it down and make sure we avoid inflation. I don't think it's able to be perfectly manipulated and managed quite that well. So I'm nervous about this really unprecedented policy of near zero interest rates for an extended period of time. We've essentially never had that.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, why is it all on the Fed? I mean, should policies coming out of the administration really be focused on fixing the economy, like energy policy, tax policy? Why are we all focused on the Fed to save the day here?
I'd much rather, and I'd vote immediately for giving the Fed a single mandate, which is to control inflation and let that growth policy come out of Washington. Now, I certainly want pro-growth policy very different than the direction of the Obama administration, but I would rather the Fed just focus on a single mandate of controlling inflation and not think they have to be masters of the universe and be in charge of growth of the economy.
Saving the day, yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Senator, good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
We so appreciate your time today.
Thanks.
Senator David Vitter from Louisiana joining us. So how did James